This is a fictional romantic story created for entertainment purposes only. I stood there completely naked, thinking I was alone, when the door opened and the most dangerous man in the city walked in. Our eyes locked, and instead of screaming or running, I whispered the words that would change both our lives forever. I thought I was alone. What happened next between the MAFIA boss and me? You'll have to listen to find out. Before we start, could you help us reach 350 likes on this video? And drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. I love knowing where our stories are traveling to around the world. I never thought my life would lead me here, standing in the shadows of Victor Romano's world. My name is Isla Bennett, and I'm not supposed to be anywhere near men like him. Men who command empires built on fear, respect, and an iron will that could crush anyone who dares to cross them. But here I am. The Bennett family has always walked a careful line in this city. My father worked in real estate, legitimate business mostly, but everyone knows that in a place like this, you can't avoid brushing shoulders with the darker side of things. When he passed away last year, he left me with more than just his properties. He left me with debts, connections, and a network of people I barely understood. Victor Romano was one of those connections. I've heard the stories, of course. Everyone has. Victor Romano, the feared MAFIA boss who controls half the city's underground operations. They say he's ruthless, that he doesn't forgive weakness, and that crossing him is the last mistake anyone ever makes. They say he's built like a fortress, covered in tattoos that tell stories of violence and victory, with a face that would make angels weep and demons bow. I've never met him in person, though. Until today. He was just a name on papers my father left behind, a signature on contracts I didn't fully understand. The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. at one of his legitimate fronts, an upscale office building downtown that houses several of his legal businesses. I was supposed to meet with his accountant to discuss transferring some properties. Routine business that should have been handled by lawyers and intermediaries. But nothing about today has been routine. The August heat in the city is unbearable, the kind that makes the air shimmer above the pavement and turns every breath into an effort. By the time I arrived at the building, my clothes were sticking to my skin, and I could feel sweat trickling down my spine. The air conditioning in the lobby was a blessing, but it wasn't enough to completely wash away the oppressive humidity that clung to me. The receptionist directed me to the 15th floor, to an office at the end of a long, quiet hallway. She mentioned that Mr. Romano's accountant might be running late, but I could wait in the office. She gave me a key card and told me to make myself comfortable. The office was impressive. All dark wood and leather furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city skyline. But the air conditioning in this particular room seemed to be broken. The moment I stepped inside, I could feel the heat pressing down on me, thick and suffocating. I tried opening a window, but they were sealed shut, probably for security reasons. I called down to the front desk, but no one answered. My phone showed no signal, probably because of the building's thick walls and whatever security measures they had in place. The heat became unbearable quickly. My silk blouse was plastered to my skin. My pencil skirt felt like it was suffocating me, and I could feel my carefully styled hair starting to wilt. I checked my watch. The accountant was already 20 minutes late, and I had no way to contact anyone. I made a decision that, in hindsight, was probably not my wisest moment. But desperation and heat can make you do irrational things. I thought I was alone. The building seemed empty. This floor particularly so. The door was locked from the inside, and I had the key card. No one could just walk in without knocking first, right? Wrong. I unbuttoned my blouse first, then slipped out of my skirt, standing in just my undergarments in the blessed relief of being free from those suffocating layers. It still wasn't enough. The heat was making me dizzy, and I could feel my skin burning up. I made the decision to slip out of everything, thinking I could cool down for just a few minutes before getting dressed again when I heard someone approaching. But no one came. So I stood there, in front of those massive windows, letting what little air movement there was cool my overheated skin. My eyes were closed, my head tilted back, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I could breathe properly. That's when I heard it. The sound of a door opening, not the main door, which I had locked. Another door, hidden in the wood paneling, one I hadn't even noticed was there. A private entrance, probably, for the man who owned this office. My eyes snapped open, and I turned. There he was, Victor Romano. He stood in the doorway of his hidden entrance, frozen in place, his hand still on the door handle. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other, two people caught completely off guard by the other's presence. I should have screamed. I should have grabbed something to cover myself. I should have done 1,000 things that a rational person would do in this situation. Instead, I just stood there, meeting his eyes, and whispered the only thing my shocked brain could formulate. I thought I was alone. Victor Romano was everything the stories said he was, and somehow more. He stood at least 6'4", with shoulders so broad they nearly filled the doorway. His arms were covered in intricate tattoos, dark ink that wrapped around muscles that looked like they'd been carved from marble. He wore a black suit that was tailored to perfection, the jacket open to reveal a crisp white shirt that stretched across his chest. But it was his face that held me captive. Sharp jawline covered in the shadow of stubble, full lips that were currently parted in surprise, and eyes that were the deepest brown I'd ever seen, almost black in the dim light of the office. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous edge that should have terrified me. Should have, but didn't. His hair was dark and perfectly styled, though one strand had fallen across his forehead, making him look almost human despite the intimidating presence he radiated. He had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers and in nightmares. Beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. For several heartbeats, we just stared at each other. I watched the surprise in his eyes shift to something else, something darker and more intense. His gaze traveled down my body, not in a leering way, but with an intensity that made my skin feel even hotter than the suffocating air around us. I should have been terrified. This man could end my life with a word, could make me disappear without a trace. But standing there, vulnerable and exposed, all I felt was a strange sense of calm. And something else. Something I couldn't quite name. An electric current that seemed to spark in the air between us. The air conditioning is broken, I heard myself say, as if that explained everything, as if that made this situation somehow normal. Victor's jaw tightened, and I saw his hands clench at his sides. He took a step into the room, letting the hidden door close behind him with a soft click that seemed to echo in the silence. "You're Isla Bennett," he said, and his voice was exactly what I imagined it would be. Deep and smooth like aged whiskey, with an edge of authority that made it clear he was used to being obeyed. "I am," I confirmed, lifting my chin slightly. I wasn't going to cower, wasn't going to apologize for a situation that wasn't entirely my fault. "You're supposed to be your accountant." Something that might have been amusement flickered in his dark eyes. "My accountant had a family emergency. I came to handle the meeting myself." "I see." I wrapped my arms around myself, not out of modesty, but because I was suddenly very aware of how vulnerable I was in this moment. Not just physically, but in every way that mattered. "I wasn't expecting you." Clearly. His voice was rough, strained, as if he was fighting to maintain his composure. He turned away from me abruptly, facing the wall, his broad shoulders tense. There should be a robe in the bathroom, through that door. I moved quickly, grateful for the escape, though I couldn't help but notice that he hadn't left the room. He stayed there, his back to me, one hand running through his hair in what looked like frustration. The bathroom was luxurious, all marble and chrome, with soft lighting that was a relief after the harsh glare of the office. I found the robe hanging on the back of the door, a plush black thing that was clearly meant for someone much larger than me. It smelled like him. I realized as I wrapped it around myself, expensive cologne and something else, something masculine and clean. When I emerged, Victor had moved to the windows, his hands in his pockets, his profile to me. He'd removed his suit jacket, and I could see the way his shirt stretched across his back, could make out the hint of more tattoos beneath the white fabric. "I apologize for the air conditioning," he said without looking at me, "and for walking in without announcing myself. This is my private office. I wasn't expecting anyone to be here." "I apologize for being here," I replied, pulling the robe tighter around myself, "and for the state you found me in." The heat was unbearable. He turned to face me then, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. "Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong." The way he said it, the certainty in his voice, made something warm bloom in my chest. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, was telling me I had nothing to be sorry for. "We should reschedule the meeting," I said, though the words felt wrong somehow. I didn't want to leave. Despite the embarrassment, despite the awkwardness of the situation, I found myself wanting to stay, to understand what this electric feeling between us meant. "No." The word was firm, leaving no room for argument. "We'll have the meeting now, but first, I'm going to fix that air conditioning." He moved to the wall, pressing something that made a panel slide open to reveal various controls. Within moments, I heard the blessed sound of cool air beginning to circulate through the room. "It wasn't broken," he said, his voice tight. "Someone turned it off. I'll find out who and why." The way he said it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cooling air. There was a threat in those words, a promise of consequences for whoever had put me in this situation. "It could have been an accident," I offered, though I wasn't sure why I was defending unknown people to this man. Victor turned to look at me, and there was something in his expression that made my heart race. "Nothing in my world happens by accident, Isla." The way he said my name, low and intimate, made me feel like he was touching me, even though he was standing several feet away. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. "We'll discuss the properties your father left you, and then I'm taking you to dinner." It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact, as if he'd already decided, and my agreement was just a formality. "You don't have to do that," I said, even as I moved to sit in the chair he'd indicated. "I want to." He moved to sit across from me, leaning back in his chair with a casual confidence that somehow made him seem even more dangerous. "Consider it an apology for the circumstances of our first meeting." Our first meeting. As if he assumed there would be more. As if he'd already decided I was going to be part of his life. I should have been alarmed by his presumption. Instead, I found myself smiling. "All right, Mr. Romano. Dinner it is." "Victor," he corrected, his eyes never leaving mine. "Call me Victor." The meeting that followed was surprisingly professional. Victor explained the properties my father had owned, the ones that were connected to his organization, and the ones that were completely clean. He offered me fair prices for the ones he wanted to acquire, and gave me sound advice about what to do with the others. He was intelligent, articulate, and despite his reputation, completely honorable in his business dealings with me. But beneath the professional conversation, there was an undercurrent of something else, a tension that made every word feel weighted with meaning. When we finished, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Victor stood, offering me his hand to help me up, and when our skin touched, I felt that electric spark again, stronger this time. "Your clothes should be dry now," he said, his voice rougher than before. "I had someone retrieve them and press them while we talked." I hadn't even noticed anyone entering the room, but sure enough, when I looked toward the bathroom, I could see my clothes hanging on the back of the door, looking fresh and perfectly pressed. "Thank you," I said softly, acutely aware that he was still holding my hand, his thumb brushing absently across my knuckles. "I'll wait outside while you dress," he said, though he seemed reluctant to let go of me. "Take your time." After he left, I dressed quickly, my mind racing with everything that had happened. This wasn't how I'd expected my day to go. I'd expected a boring meeting with an accountant, maybe signing some papers, and then going home to my empty apartment. Instead, I'd met Victor Romano, and somehow in the span of an hour my entire world had shifted on its axis. When I emerged from the bathroom, he was waiting in the hallway, his jacket back on, looking every inch the powerful man he was rumored to be. But when he looked at me, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't power or authority. It was hunger. Raw, undisguised hunger that made my knees weak and my heart race. "Ready?" he asked, offering me his arm like we were going to a society ball rather than dinner. "Ready," I confirmed, slipping my hand into the crook of his elbow and letting him lead me toward whatever came next. As we walked to the elevator, I couldn't help but think about how my father had always warned me about getting involved with dangerous men. But looking up at Victor's profile, at the strong line of his jaw and the way his eyes softened slightly when he looked down at me, I wondered if maybe some risks were worth taking. The elevator ride down was silent, but it was a comfortable silence, charged with anticipation rather than awkwardness. Victor's hand covered mine where it rested on his arm, his thumb tracing small circles that sent shivers down my spine. When we reached the lobby, a sleek black car was already waiting. Victor opened the door for me himself, rather than letting his driver do it, and I slid into the leather interior with a sense of stepping into a new chapter of my life. As Victor slid in beside me and the car pulled away from the curb, I caught my reflection in the window. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright with excitement and maybe a hint of fear. I looked like a woman on the edge of something momentous, something that would change everything. And maybe I was. "You're thinking too hard," Victor said beside me, his voice amused. "I can practically hear the wheels turning in your head." I turned to look at him, finding him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "I'm trying to figure out how this happened." "This?" he prompted, though I suspected he knew exactly what I meant. "This," I gestured between us. 2 hours ago we were strangers. Now I'm in your car, going to dinner with you, and it feels like the most natural thing in the world." Victor's hand found mine in the darkness of the car, his fingers intertwining with mine. "Some things don't need to be figured out, Isla. Some things just are." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I found myself relaxing into the seat, into the moment, into whatever this thing between us was becoming. The restaurant he took me to was exclusive, the kind of place where you needed reservations months in advance, and knew someone who knew someone just to get through the door. But for Victor Romano, doors opened without question, and we were ushered to a private room at the back, away from prying eyes. "I wasn't sure you'd actually agree to dinner," Victor said once we were alone, wine poured and menus in hand. "I wasn't sure I would either," I admitted. "But I'm glad I did." "Why?" The question was direct, challenging, and I got the sense that my answer mattered to him more than he was letting on. I set down my menu and met his eyes. "Because for the first time in a long time I feel alive. Because you make me want to be brave. Because when you look at me, I don't feel like I need to be anyone other than who I am." Something shifted in Victor's expression, a wall crumbling that I hadn't even realized was there. He reached across the table, taking my hand in both of his, and the gesture was so tender it made my heart ache. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice low and serious. "My world is dangerous, Isla. The people in it don't play by normal rules. If you walk away right now, I'll understand. I'll make sure the property transfers go smoothly, and you'll never have to see me again." "But," I prompted, because I could hear the unspoken word hanging in the air between us. "But if you stay," he continued, his grip on my hand tightening, "if you choose this, choose me, I will protect you with everything I have. You'll never have to be afraid, never have to face anything alone. I will be yours completely, and I will expect the same in return." The weight of what he was offering, what he was asking for, settled over me. This wasn't just dinner. This wasn't just attraction. This was Victor Romano offering me a place in his life, in his world, with all the danger and protection that came with it. I should have been scared. I should have walked away. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath the dangerous exterior, I knew what my answer would be. "I'm not walking away," I said firmly. "I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing you." The relief that washed over Victor's face when I said those words was almost overwhelming. For just a moment, the dangerous mafia boss disappeared, and I saw the man beneath, the one who wanted to be chosen, to be seen as more than just his reputation. "You have no idea how much I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted, bringing my hand to his lips and pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent heat flooding through my entire body. Dinner was incredible, though I couldn't tell you what we ate. I was too focused on Victor, on the way he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered, on the stories he told about his life that revealed layers I never expected. He wasn't just the monster people made him out to be. Yes, he was dangerous. Yes, he controlled an empire built on fear and respect, but he was also intelligent, surprisingly funny, and fiercely protective of the people he cared about. "My father started the organization," he told me over dessert, his fingers playing absently with mine across the table. "He built it from nothing, turned it into something powerful, but he also made a lot of enemies along the way." "Is he still alive?" I asked softly, sensing the pain beneath his words. "No, he was killed when I was 23. My mother had already passed from cancer years before. I inherited everything, including all the people who wanted to see our family destroyed." His jaw tightened, and I saw the flash of old anger in his eyes. "I've spent the last 10 years proving that I'm not someone who can be destroyed easily." I squeezed his hand, wanting to offer comfort even though I knew he probably didn't think he needed it. "I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast." Victor looked at me with something like wonder in his eyes. "You're the first person who's ever said that to me. Everyone else just sees the power, the money, the fear I inspire. But you see me." "I'm trying to," I said honestly. "I want to understand you, Victor. All of you, not just the parts you show the world." He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. "That goes both ways. Tell me about you, Isla. What do you want from life?" It was a simple question, but no one had asked me that in years. Since my father died, I'd been so focused on surviving, on managing his affairs and trying to figure out what came next, that I'd forgotten to think about what I actually wanted. "I want to matter," I said finally. "I want to build something meaningful, something that makes a difference. My father's legacy is complicated, and I want to honor the good parts of it while moving beyond the rest." "You already matter," Victor said with absolute certainty, "and I'm going to help you build whatever you want to build. You have my resources, my connections, my protection, all of it." The magnitude of what he was offering hit me. Victor Romano didn't make promises lightly, and he certainly didn't offer his support to just anyone. "Why me?" I asked, needing to understand. "You could have anyone. Why are you offering me all of this?" Victor stood, moving around the table to stand beside me. He offered me his hand, and when I took it, he pulled me to my feet, drawing me close until we were barely inches apart. Because when I walked into that office and saw you standing there, completely vulnerable and completely unafraid, something shifted in me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You could have panicked, could have tried to hide or apologize or make yourself smaller, but you didn't. You stood there and met my eyes and told me the truth. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? How precious honesty is when you're surrounded by people who are always trying to manipulate or use you?" I tilted my head back to look up at him, struck by the raw honesty in his words. I wasn't being brave. I was just too shocked to be anything else. "That's exactly my point," he said, his hands settling on my waist, warm and possessive. "You weren't performing. You weren't trying to be anything other than who you are. And who you are is extraordinary." Before I could respond, his lips were on mine, and the kiss was everything I'd imagined it would be and more. He kissed me like he was claiming me, like he was branding himself into my soul, and I kissed him back with everything I had. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Victor rested his forehead against mine. "Come home with me tonight." It wasn't a demand, despite the authority in his voice. It was a request, one I could refuse if I wanted to. But I didn't want to. I wanted to be with him, wanted to explore this connection that felt like it had been building between us for lifetimes, rather than hours. "Yes," I whispered, and felt him smile against my skin. The drive to his home was shorter than I expected, though maybe that was just because I was distracted by the way Victor's hand rested on my thigh, his thumb drawing lazy patterns that made it hard to think about anything else. His house was in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city, a sprawling estate that spoke of old money and carefully cultivated power. Security was everywhere, subtle but unmistakable, and I realized that this was Victor's sanctuary, the place where he could let his guard down. Inside, the house was surprisingly warm and lived in. I'd expected something cold and impersonal, all marble and sharp edges. Instead, there were comfortable leather sofas, bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes, and artwork that looked like it had been chosen because it meant something, not because it was expensive. "This isn't what I expected," I admitted, looking around the spacious living room. "What did you expect?" Victor asked, amused, as he shrugged out of his jacket and loosened his tie. "Something more intimidating, more fortress, less home." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. "This is my private space. Out there, I have to be Victor Romano, the MAFIA boss, the man everyone fears. In here, I get to just be Victor." The vulnerability in that admission made my heart ache. I moved closer to him, reaching up to help him with his tie, slowly pulling it free from his collar. "I like just Victor," I said softly, letting the tie fall to the floor. His hands came up to cup my face, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. "Just Victor is yours, Isla. However you want me, whenever you want me, I'm yours." The kiss that followed was different from the one in the restaurant. This one was slower, deeper, full of promise and possibility. Victor's hands moved from my face to my hair, then down my back, drawing me closer until there was no space left between us. "Are you sure about this?" he murmured against my lips. "Once we cross this line, there's no going back. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours. And I don't share, Isla. I don't do casual, and I don't do temporary." I should have been overwhelmed by the intensity of his words, by the commitment he was demanding. But instead, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me, a certainty that this was exactly where I was supposed to be. "I'm sure," I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "I want this. I want you." What happened next was a blur of sensation and emotion. Victor lifted me easily, carrying me through the house to his bedroom, where he set me down gently on the edge of his massive bed. The room was masculine, but not cold, with dark wood furniture and soft lighting that made everything feel intimate and safe. He stood in front of me, his eyes dark with desire, and slowly began unbuttoning his shirt. I watched, mesmerized, as each button revealed more of the tattooed skin beneath. His chest was a work of art, muscles defined and covered in intricate ink that told stories I wanted to learn. When his shirt fell to the floor, I reached out, my fingers tracing the lines of a tattoo that spread across his ribs. "What does this one mean?" "It's a phoenix," he said, his voice strained as my fingers explored his skin. "It represents rising from the ashes of my father's death, becoming something stronger." I pressed a kiss to the tattoo, feeling him shudder beneath my touch. "You are strong, but you don't have to be strong alone anymore." His control snapped. He lowered me back onto the bed, covering my body with his, and kissed me with a passion that made everything else fade away. There was only Victor, only this moment, only the feeling of finally being exactly where I belonged. We made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies and what made each other gasp and moan. Victor was attentive and demanding in equal measure, pushing me to heights I'd never experienced before. And when we finally found our release together, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just sex. This was connection, intimacy, the kind of bond that transcended the physical and became something deeper, something permanent. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. I could hear his heartbeat beneath my ear, strong and steady, and I felt safer than I had in years. "Tell me about your tattoos," I murmured, my fingers tracing the ink on his arm. Victor's chest rumbled with a low chuckle. "That could take all night." "We have all night," I pointed out, tilting my head to look up at him. His expression softened, and he pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Yes, we do." He spent the next hour telling me the stories behind his tattoos, the rose on his shoulder for his mother, the dates of his parents' deaths on his ribs, the initials of friends he'd lost along the way scattered across his body like a memorial. Each one was a piece of his history, a reminder of who he was and where he'd come from. "What about this one?" I asked, tracing a sword that ran down his forearm. "That's my promise to myself," he said quietly. "A reminder that I'll always fight for what's mine, that I'll protect the people I love no matter what it costs me." "And who do you love?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I was ready for the answer. Victor took my hand, bringing it to his lips and kissing each fingertip slowly. "My sister, though she lives in Italy now and I rarely see her. A few close friends who've been with me since the beginning, and as of today, you." My breath caught. "Victor, we just met." "I know," he said, his eyes serious as they met mine. "But I also know what I feel. I know that I've never felt this way about anyone before. I know that the thought of you leaving makes my chest ache. And I know that I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." Tears pricked at my eyes. "That's crazy. We barely know each other. Then we'll spend the rest of our lives getting to know each other," he said simply. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Isla. I'm just asking you to give us, a real chance. Let me prove to you that what I feel is real." I should have been scared. I should have put on the brakes, insisted we take things slow. But lying there in his arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the warmth of his skin, I couldn't bring myself to be cautious. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, let's see where this goes." The smile that spread across Victor's face was brilliant, transforming him from dangerous to devastatingly handsome. He rolled us over so I was on top of him, and kissed me with a sweetness that made my heart swell. "You won't regret this," he promised. "I'm going to spend every day proving to you that you made the right choice." We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't have nightmares. I didn't wake up anxious about the future or worried about what came next. I just slept, peacefully and completely, knowing that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and Victor was already awake, propped up on one elbow watching me with an expression of such tenderness, it made my heart ache. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Good morning," I replied, stretching like a cat. "Have you been watching me sleep?" "Maybe," he admitted, not looking the least bit embarrassed. "You look peaceful when you sleep. Happy." "I am happy," I said, surprised by how true it was. "I didn't expect to be, but I am." Victor leaned down to kiss me, slow and sweet. "Get used to it. I plan on making you happy for a very long time." After breakfast, which Victor insisted on making himself, and which turned out to be surprisingly delicious, he had to leave for a meeting. But before he went, he gave me a key to his house and a number where I could always reach him. "Stay as long as you want," he said, "or go home and come back tonight. Whatever makes you comfortable. But know that I want you here, Isla. I want you in my space, in my life, in my bed. Always." I took the key, feeling the weight of what it represented. "I'll be here when you get back." The kiss he gave me before leaving was scorching, full of promise and heat. When he finally pulled away, I was breathless and aching for more. "I'll be back by 6, he said. "We'll have dinner here, just the two of us." After he left, I explored the house more thoroughly. Each room revealed new facets of Victor's personality. The library was filled with books on everything from philosophy to military strategy. The gym was state-of-the-art, clearly well used. And in what looked like a study, I found photographs. Victor with an older couple who had to be his parents, all of them smiling. Victor with a beautiful young woman who looked so much like him she had to be his sister. Victor with a group of men, all of them armed, all of them looking fierce and loyal. These were the people who made up Victor's world, the ones he protected and who protected him in return. And now, somehow, I was part of that world too. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, there was just one line: "Thinking about you. V." I smiled, feeling warmth bloom in my chest. I typed back quickly, "Thinking about you too. Come home safe." His response was immediate. "Always. I have something worth coming home to now." I spent the rest of the day in a happy daze, alternating between exploring the house, reading in the library, and daydreaming about Victor. It felt surreal, this sudden shift in my life, but it also felt right in a way I couldn't quite explain. When 6 o'clock rolled around, I heard the front door open and Victor's voice calling my name. I appeared at the top of the stairs, and the way his face lit up when he saw me made my heart skip. "There you are," he said, taking the stairs 2 at a time to reach me. He pulled me into his arms, burying his face in my hair. "God, I missed you." "It's only been a few hours," I laughed, but I was holding him just as tightly. "Too long," he murmured. "Any amount of time away from you is too long." We had dinner on the terrace, watching the sun set over the city while we ate and talked and laughed. Victor told me about his day, carefully editing out the dangerous parts, but giving me enough to understand the weight of the decisions he had to make. In return, I told him about my hopes for the properties my father had left me, about wanting to turn some of them into affordable housing or community centers, ways to give back to the neighborhoods that had been affected by my father's less than legitimate dealings. "I love that," Victor said, his eyes warm as he looked at me. "I'll help you make it happen. Whatever you need." You don't have to do that, I protested. This is my project. Our project, he corrected gently. That's what this is, Isla. We're partners now. Your dreams are my dreams. Your goals are my goals. We're in this together. The certainty in his voice, the absolute commitment, should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel cherished, valued in a way I never had before. Later that night, as we lay in bed again, Victor's arms wrapped securely around me. I felt a sense of contentment I'd never experienced. This was what I'd been missing, what I'd been searching for without even knowing it. What are you thinking? Victor asked, his voice rumbling in his chest beneath my ear. I'm thinking that yesterday I was alone, and today I have you. And it feels like everything has changed. Everything has changed, he agreed. For both of us. You walked into my life and turned it upside down in the best possible way. I tilted my head up to kiss him, pouring everything I felt into that kiss. When we broke apart, both breathless, Victor's eyes were dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked a lot like love. Stay with me, he whispered. Not just tonight, but always. Move in with me. Let me take care of you. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. Victor, it's too fast, I protested weakly, even though everything in me was screaming yes. I don't care, he said fiercely. I know what I want, and I want you. Here, with me, every single day. Say yes, Isla. Take a chance on us. I looked into his eyes, saw the vulnerability there beneath the fierce determination, and felt my last reservations crumble. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll stay. Moving in with Victor happened faster than I could have imagined. Within a week, my things were packed and transferred to his estate, my old apartment a memory. It should have felt rushed, reckless even, but instead it felt like coming home. Victor was true to his word in every way. He was attentive without being suffocating, protective without being controlling, and passionate in a way that made my head spin. Every morning I woke up in his arms, and every night I fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat. But it wasn't all perfect. Living with Victor meant accepting the realities of his world, and those realities came with complications I hadn't fully anticipated. The first sign of trouble came 2 weeks after I moved in. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard raised voices from Victor's study. He'd been in there since early morning, dealing with what he'd vaguely described as business issues. I hesitated, torn between giving him privacy and making sure he was okay. In the end, concern won out. I knocked softly on the door. Come in, Victor's voice called, sounding tired. I opened the door to find him behind his massive desk, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it. And there was a hardness in his eyes that reminded me exactly who he was in the world beyond our bedroom. Everything okay? I asked softly, closing the door behind me. Victor's expression softened immediately when he saw me. Come here. I circled the desk, and he pulled me into his lap, burying his face against my neck. I could feel the tension in his body, the weight he carried. Talk to me, I murmured, running my fingers through his hair. What's going on? He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe he wouldn't tell me. But then he sighed, his arms tightening around me. There's another organization moving in on our territory, he said finally. They've been pushing boundaries, testing our defenses. It's nothing I can't handle, but it's going to get messy before it gets better. Messy how? I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know. Nothing you need to worry about, he said, but I could hear the evasion in his voice. I pulled back to look at him. Victor, if we're going to make this work, you can't shut me out. I know what you do. I know it's dangerous. But I chose this, chose you, knowing all of that. Don't protect me by keeping me in the dark. Something shifted in his expression, a mix of surprise and respect. Most people want to know as little as possible. I'm not most people, I reminded him. And I need to understand what we're dealing with. How dangerous is this? Victor studied my face for a long moment before nodding. There's a man named Marcus Volkov. He runs an organization out of the East Side, mostly drugs and weapons. He's been trying to expand, and that means coming into conflict with us. My people have had a few confrontations with his in the past week. Nobody's been seriously hurt yet, but it's escalating. What are you going to do? Meet with him. Try to negotiate boundaries, territory agreements. If he's reasonable, we can avoid a war. If he's not, Victor's jaw tightened. Then we do what we have to do to protect what's ours. The casual way he said it, the acceptance of violence as a necessary tool, should have frightened me. But I'd known what I was getting into with Victor. I'd seen the scars on his body, heard the stories about his past. This was his reality, and now it was mine too. When is this meeting? I asked. Tomorrow night. Neutral ground, public place, plenty of witnesses to keep everyone honest. I want to come with you. Absolutely not, Victor said immediately, his arms tightening around me. It's too dangerous. Everything about your life is dangerous, I countered. But if I'm going to be your partner, I need to be your partner in all things, not just the easy ones. Besides, having me there might actually make things go smoother. Harder for him to start something with a woman present. Victor looked torn, and I could see him weighing the risks. If something happened to you because I brought you into this world, I couldn't live with myself. I cupped his face in my hands, making sure he was looking directly at me. Nothing is going to happen to me. You'll be there, and I trust you to keep me safe. Please, Victor, let me do this with you. He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to mine. You're going to be the death of me, you know that? Is that a yes? That's a yes, he conceded. But you stay close to me the entire time. And if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. No arguments. Deal, I agreed, sealing it with a kiss. The next night, I dressed carefully for the meeting. Victor had explained that image mattered in his world, that showing up looking powerful and confident could make the difference between being respected and being seen as a target. I chose a black dress that was elegant but not revealing, paired with heels that gave me extra height and confidence. When I emerged from the bedroom, Victor was waiting, looking devastating in a dark suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and intimidating presence. His eyes heated when he saw me. You look incredible. So do you, I said, moving to adjust his tie, even though it didn't need adjusting. Are you sure about this? I'm sure about you, he said, catching my hands and bringing them to his lips. Just stay close to me, and everything will be fine. The meeting was at an upscale restaurant, the kind where mob bosses could sit down and talk business while appearing to be just successful businessmen having dinner. Victor had reserved a private room in the back, and when we arrived, his security team was already in place, watchful and ready. Marcus Volkov was already there when we entered, and I understood immediately why Victor was concerned. The man radiated violence, with cold blue eyes and a smile that never reached them. He was flanked by two large men who looked like they'd kill without hesitation. Romano, Volkov said, his accent thick. I wasn't expecting you to bring a date. This is Isla, Victor said, his hand possessive on my lower back. And we're here to discuss boundaries, not my personal life. Volkov's eyes raked over me in a way that made my skin crawl, but I kept my expression neutral. This was Victor's world, and I needed to show that I could handle it. Beautiful, Volkov said, though it didn't sound like a compliment. Does she know what kind of man you are, Romano? What you've done? She knows everything she needs to know, Victor replied, his voice cold. Now, are we here to talk business, or did you ask for this meeting just to waste my time? The two men stared at each other, tension crackling in the air. Finally, Volkov gestured to the table. Let's talk. The negotiation that followed was intense. Volkov wanted access to several territories that Victor controlled, claiming that there was enough business for both of them. Victor countered that those territories were his by right, earned through years of building relationships and maintaining order. I stayed quiet, watching and learning. I could see how Victor navigated the conversation, firm but not aggressive, making it clear that he wouldn't be pushed around but leaving room for compromise. It was a delicate dance, and he was skilled at it. But Volkov wasn't interested in compromise. He wanted everything, and he wasn't subtle about it. You're getting soft, Romano, Volkov said, leaning back in his chair. Time was, you would have fought for what was yours. Now you want to talk and negotiate like we're businessmen instead of what we really are. And what are we really? Victor asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Predators, Volkov said with a cold smile. And in the animal kingdom, predators don't share territory. They fight for it. I felt Victor tense beside me, saw his hands clench on the table. This was going south fast, and I knew I needed to do something before it escalated beyond repair. Mr. Volkov, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. You're right that predators fight for territory, but intelligent predators also know when fighting is going to cost more than it's worth. Volkov's attention snapped to me, his eyes narrowing. You think you know about this world, little girl. Though, I know enough to understand that a war between your organizations would be expensive and bloody for both sides, I said, meeting his gaze steadily. I also know that there are ways to expand your business without stepping on each other's toes. Have you considered the North Docks? The North Docks are controlled by the Irish, Volkov said dismissively. They were, I corrected. But I happen to know that Patrick O'Sullivan is retiring next month. He's looking for someone to take over his operations, someone who can keep things running smoothly. If you approached him with the right offer, you could have access to shipping routes that would triple your current capacity without conflicting with Victor's territories at all. There was a moment of stunned silence. Even Victor was looking at me with surprise. How do you know about O'Sullivan? Volkov asked, his eyes sharp. My father did business with him for years, I said. I still have connections to his organization. I could facilitate an introduction if you're interested. Volkov studied me for a long moment, and I forced myself to hold his gaze, even though every instinct screamed at me to look away. Finally, he turned to Victor. Your woman has a head for business, he said. Maybe you're not as soft as I thought. Isla is smart, which is one of many reasons she's with me, Victor said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. So, are you interested in pursuing the O'Sullivan angle? Or are we going to keep butting heads over territory you can't take without starting a war you can't win? Volkov's jaw tightened, but I could see him calculating, weighing his options. Set up the meeting with O'Sullivan. If it goes well, we have a deal. If not, we're back where we started. Agreed, Victor said, extending his hand across the table. After a tense moment, Volkov shook it, sealing the temporary truce. As soon as we were back in the car, Victor pulled me into his arms, kissing me fiercely. That was incredibly risky, he said when he finally pulled away. And absolutely brilliant. I couldn't just sit there and watch it fall apart, I said, my heart still racing from the adrenaline. Besides, I do still have those connections. My father's contacts have been reaching out since his death, wanting to maintain relationships. O'Sullivan was one of them. Can you really set up that meeting? Victor asked. I can, I confirmed. Patrick always liked my father. If I ask him for a favor, he'll do it. Question is, should I? Victor was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. Volkov is dangerous, and I don't trust him. But if we can redirect his ambitions away from our territories, it buys us time to strengthen our positions and potentially turn him into an ally rather than an enemy. So I should make the call? If you're comfortable with it, yes. But Isla, I need you to understand something. He cupped my face in his hands, his expression serious. What you did tonight was brave and smart, but it also put you on Volkov's radar. He knows you have connections, knows you're not just some pretty face I keep around. That makes you valuable, but it also makes you a potential target. I can handle it, I said with more confidence than I felt. I know you can, Victor said softly. But you shouldn't have to. This is my world, my mess. I never wanted to drag you into it. You didn't drag me anywhere, I reminded him. I walked in with my eyes open, and tonight proved that I can be an asset to you, not just a liability to protect. You were never a liability, Victor said fiercely. But yes, tonight you proved that you're not just my partner in my private life. You could be my partner in everything. The weight of what he was offering settled over me. This was more than just living together, more than just being in a relationship. Victor was offering me a real place in his world, a voice in his organization, power and influence that most people in his position would never give to someone they'd known for less than a month. Are you sure? I asked. This is a big step. I've never been more sure of anything, Victor said. You're brilliant, Isla. You see angles that I miss, connections that I don't have. Together, we could be unstoppable. I thought about what he was offering, about the life I'd be committing to. It would be dangerous, complicated, morally gray in ways that my old life never was. But it would also be meaningful, powerful, a chance to actually make a difference in the world that Victor operated in. Okay, I said finally. Let's do this. Together. The kiss Victor gave me was full of promise and passion, and by the time we got home, we could barely make it through the door before we were tearing at each other's clothes. Making love with Victor that night felt different, more intense. It wasn't just physical desire, though that was certainly there. It was commitment, partnership, the sealing of a bond that went deeper than anything I'd experienced before. Afterward, as we lay tangled together, Victor's fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin, I felt a sense of rightness that I'd never experienced before. This was where I belonged, who I was meant to be. I love you, Victor said suddenly, his voice rough with emotion. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you, Isla. I think I loved you from the moment you looked at me and said you thought you were alone. Tears pricked my eyes. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Don't be scared, he murmured, pulling me closer. I've got you. Always. The next morning, I made the call to Patrick O'Sullivan. The old Irishman was delighted to hear from me, expressing his condolences about my father and asking how I was managing. When I brought up the possibility of introducing him to someone who might be interested in taking over his operations, he was immediately interested. We set up a meeting for the following week, and I could hear the relief in his voice. Apparently, he'd been worried about finding the right successor, someone who could maintain the relationships he'd built over decades. After I hung up, Victor pulled me into his arms, pressing a kiss to my temple. You're amazing, you know that? I'm just using the resources I have, I said, but I couldn't help smiling at the praise. No, you're being brilliant and strategic, and I'm constantly in awe of you, he corrected. Now how about we celebrate your successful negotiation? How did you have in mind? I asked, though the heat in his eyes gave me a pretty good idea. I was thinking we could stay in bed all day, he murmured against my neck. Test the structural integrity of the mattress. Maybe christen a few other pieces of furniture. I laughed. but it quickly turned into a moan as his lips found that sensitive spot below my ear. "Don't you have work to do?" "Nothing more important than this," he said, lifting me easily and carrying me back to the bedroom. "Nothing more important than you." The week leading up to the O'Sullivan meeting was intense. Victor was teaching me more about his business, introducing me to his key people, and making it clear that I was to be respected as his partner. Some of them were skeptical at first. This woman who'd appeared out of nowhere and suddenly had the boss's ear. But Victor shut down any dissent quickly and firmly. "Isla is my partner in every sense of the word," he told his inner circle during a meeting I attended. "Her insights, her connections, her ideas, they're all valuable. You will treat her with the same respect you treat me, or you'll find yourself looking for a new organization to work for." The absolute authority in his voice, the way his people immediately fell in line, was both intimidating and exciting. This was Victor in his element, commanding and powerful, and knowing that he was using that power to protect and elevate me made my heart swell. The meeting with O'Sullivan and Volkov went better than I'd hoped. Patrick took to Volkov immediately, seeing in him someone hungry and ambitious enough to maintain and grow his operations. By the end of the dinner, they'd worked out the framework of a deal, and Volkov actually smiled at me, a real smile this time rather than that cold, calculating look. "You did good, Isla Bennett," he said as we were leaving. "Maybe Romano is smarter than I gave him credit for, keeping you around." "I'm the smart one for keeping her," Victor corrected, his arm around my waist. "But I'm glad we could come to an arrangement." "Me too," Volkov admitted. "A war would have been expensive for everyone. This way, we all win." As we drove home that night, Victor was quieter than usual. When I asked him what he was thinking, he pulled the car over on a quiet street overlooking the city and turned to face me. "Marry me," he said simply. I stared at him. Sure, I'd misheard. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated, taking my hands in his. "I know it's fast. I know we haven't been together long, but I don't care. I love you, Isla. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build an empire with you, have children with you, grow old with you. I want all of it, everything with you. Victor, we've known each other for less than a month," I said, though my heart was racing. "I don't care," he said fiercely. "I've lived enough life, seen enough of the world, to know when something is right. And you, us, this is right. It's the most right thing I've ever felt. So yes, it's fast. But when you know, you know. And I know." I looked into his eyes, saw the absolute certainty there, the love and commitment and fierce determination. This man was offering me everything, his heart, his life, his world. All I had to do was say yes. "Ask me properly," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. Victor's face lit up. He got out of the car, came around to my side, and opened my door. Then, right there on the side of the road overlooking the city, he got down on one knee. "Isla Bennett," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, I'll marry you." The next morning, I woke up with a ring on my finger. It wasn't just any ring. It was a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. Victor told me it had been his grandmother's, passed down from his father before he died. "She would have loved you," he said, as I stared at the ring in wonder. "She would have said you were exactly the kind of woman our family needed. Strong, smart, not afraid to speak your mind." I couldn't stop looking at it. Couldn't stop thinking about the fact that I was engaged to Victor Romano. A month ago, I'd been alone, struggling to figure out what to do with my life. Now I had a partner, a purpose, and a future that looked brighter than anything I could have imagined. But along with the joy came reality. Being engaged to Victor meant being a target. It meant accepting that danger would always be part of our lives. And it meant that I needed to learn how to truly navigate his world, not just survive in it. "I want you to learn how to protect yourself," Victor said over breakfast that morning. "I have the best security in the city, and I'll always do everything in my power to keep you safe. But I'd feel better knowing you could defend yourself if something happened and I wasn't there." "You want me to learn to fight?" I asked, surprised. "I want you to learn to shoot, to fight, to be aware of your surroundings," he clarified. "I want you to have options if things go wrong. My head of security, Marcus, is one of the best. He can teach you everything you need to know." I should have been intimidated by the idea. Learning to use weapons, to fight, to think like someone in Victor's world. But instead, I felt a surge of determination. If I was going to be Victor's partner, his equal, I needed to be able to hold my own. "Okay," I said. "When do we start?" Victor smiled, that proud, possessive smile that made my heart race. "Today, if you're up for it." Marcus turned out to be a serious man in his 40s with military precision and no patience for excuses. Over the next 2 weeks, he put me through intensive training, teaching me hand-to-hand combat, weapons handling, situational awareness, and escape techniques. It was brutal. I came home every day covered in bruises, exhausted to the bone. But Victor was there every night, massaging my sore muscles, telling me how proud he was, making love to me with a tenderness that made all the pain worth it. "You're a natural," Marcus told me after a particularly grueling session. "Most people your size would rely on weapons, but you've got good instincts for close combat. You know how to use your opponent's size against them." "She's always been smart," Victor said from where he was watching. He'd started sitting in on my training sessions, and I'd be lying if I said his presence didn't motivate me to push harder. By the end of the month, I'd gone from someone who'd never thrown a punch to someone who could hold my own in a fight. I wasn't at Marcus's level, probably never would be, but I was competent enough that Victor seemed to relax a little. "I still don't like the idea of you ever needing to use this," he said one night as we lay in bed. "But I'm glad you know how." "Me too," I admitted. "It's empowering, knowing I'm not helpless." "You were never helpless," Victor said, pulling me closer. "But now you're dangerous, and that's incredibly attractive." I laughed, but it turned into a gasp as his hands started wandering. "Dangerous, huh?" "Lethal," he murmured against my skin, "in all the best ways." We set the wedding date for 3 months out. Victor wanted it sooner, but I insisted on taking at least a little time to plan. Not that I wanted some massive society wedding, quite the opposite. What I wanted was something intimate, meaningful, surrounded by people who actually mattered to us. Planning the wedding meant meeting more of Victor's world. His sister, Isabella, flew in from Italy, and I loved her immediately. She was warm and funny, with the same dark eyes as her brother and a wicked sense of humor. "I never thought I'd see Victor like this," she told me over lunch while Victor was in a meeting. "He's always been so serious, so focused on the business. But with you, he's different. Happier. More human." "He's an amazing man," I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "He is," she agreed. "But he's also dangerous, and I can see that you know that. You're not some naive girl who thinks she can change him or save him. You see him for exactly who he is, and you love him anyway. That's rare." "I do see him," I confirmed. "All of him, and I wouldn't change a thing." Isabella reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm so glad he found you. You're going to be good for each other." The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of activity. Victor was dealing with ongoing business issues, including making sure the arrangement with Volkov was holding, and that no other organizations were trying to test boundaries. I was working on converting some of my father's properties into the community projects I'd dreamed of, using Victor's resources and connections to make it happen faster than I could have on my own. We were partners in every sense of the word, and it felt right in a way that nothing else in my life ever had. But happiness in Victor's world always came with a price. The threat came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was at one of the properties I was converting, meeting with contractors, when Marcus appeared with a worried expression. "We need to go," he said quietly. "Now." I didn't argue. I'd learned to trust Marcus's instincts. He hustled me into the car, and we were back at Victor's estate within 20 minutes. Victor was waiting in his study, his face grim. When he saw me, relief flashed across his features, but it was quickly replaced by anger. "What happened?" I asked, moving to his side. "Someone tried to send you a message," he said, his jaw tight. "A box was delivered to the property you were at. It contained a dead rat and a note." "What did the note say?" I asked, my heart pounding. Victor's hands clenched into fists. "It said that pretty birds in gilded cages should remember they're not bulletproof." Ice slid down my spine. "Volkov?" "No," Victor said. "This isn't his style. Someone else. Someone who thinks they can threaten what's mine." "What are we going to do?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I'm going to find out who sent it, and I'm going to make it very clear that touching you is the last mistake they'll ever make," Victor said, his voice cold and hard. "But in the meantime, you don't go anywhere without Marcus or one of my other security team, not until we know who's behind this." I wanted to argue, to insist that I wouldn't be caged by fear, but looking at Victor's face, seeing the genuine fear beneath the anger, I nodded. "Okay." The investigation took 5 days, and they were the longest 5 days of my life. Victor barely slept, working around the clock to identify the threat. I could see the toll it was taking on him, the stress of trying to protect me while maintaining control of his organization. Finally, they found the source. It was a small-time operator who'd been trying to make a name for himself by going after Victor's weak spots. He'd thought that threatening me would make Victor look vulnerable, would give him leverage to demand territory or money. He'd been very, very wrong. I didn't ask what Victor did when he found the man. I didn't need to know the details. All I needed to know was that when Victor came home that night, there was blood on his knuckles and a grim satisfaction in his eyes. "It's handled," he said simply. "No one is going to threaten you again." I took his hands, carefully cleaning the blood away with gentle touches. "Are you okay?" He looked at me with surprise. "You're asking if I'm okay?" "Isla, someone threatened you. You could have been hurt, or worse, because of me." "But I wasn't," I said firmly. "And I'm not going anywhere. This is our life, Victor. I knew there would be danger. That doesn't change how I feel about you." "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes," he confessed, pulling me into his arms. "The thought of losing you, of someone hurting you because of who I am, what I do, it makes me want to burn the whole world down." "Then it's a good thing I'm not going anywhere," I said, holding him just as tightly. "We're in this together, remember? For better or worse." "We're not even married yet," he said with a hint of his usual humor. "We might as well be," I pointed out. "I'm already living in your world, fighting your fights, dealing with your enemies. The wedding is just making it official." "Making it official is important to me," Victor said seriously. "I want everyone to know you're mine. I want the world to understand that touching you means going through me. I want that ring on your finger and my name attached to yours so that there's never any question about where you belong." "I already belong to you," I said softly, "and you belong to me. A piece of paper doesn't change that." "No, but it makes it permanent," he said, his eyes intense. "It makes it forever." "I'm already planning on forever," I told him, "with or without a wedding." The kiss he gave me was fierce and possessive, full of all the fear and relief and love he'd been holding back. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathless. 3 more weeks, he said. 3 more weeks until you're my wife. 3 more weeks, I agreed. And then nothing and no one can come between us. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. We decided on a small ceremony at Victor's estate, with just immediate family and his closest, most trusted people. Isabella was my maid of honor, and Victor's best friend, a man named Gabriel who'd been with him since childhood, stood as his best man. I wore a simple white dress that made me feel beautiful rather than like I was playing dress-up. My hair was loose, the way Victor liked it, with just a small crown of flowers. When I walked down the makeshift aisle in Victor's garden, I only had eyes for him. He stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit, his dark eyes locked on mine, and the love I saw there took my breath away. The ceremony itself was short and sweet. We'd written our own vows, and when it was my turn to speak, I looked into Victor's eyes and told him the truth. Victor, when I met you, I was lost. I didn't know who I was supposed to be or what I was supposed to do with my life. You showed me that I could be strong, powerful, and loved all at the same time. You gave me purpose and partnership and a future I never dreamed was possible. I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes, to be your partner in all things, to love you even when it's hard, and to never stop choosing you every single day for the rest of our lives. By the time I finished, there were tears in his eyes, and my own voice was shaking with emotion. When Victor spoke, his voice was rough but steady. Isla, you walked into my life and turned everything upside down in the best possible way. You saw past the reputation, past the fear, past all the walls I'd built, and you chose to stay anyway. You make me want to be better, to build something worth leaving behind. I promise to protect you always, to respect you as my equal, to love you with everything I have, and to spend every day proving that you made the right choice when you chose me. You're my home, my heart, my everything, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. We were both crying by the time the officiant pronounced us husband and wife. The kiss we shared was sweet and tender, full of promise and hope for the future. The reception was small, but perfect. Dancing under strings of lights with Victor, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about us, I felt happier than I'd ever been. Happy, Mrs. Romano? Victor murmured as we swayed to the music. Deliriously, I confirmed. You? I didn't think I could be this happy, he admitted. I thought that kind of happiness wasn't for people like me. But you proved me wrong. You proved me wrong about so many things. Get used to it, I teased. I plan on proving you wrong for the next 50 or 60 years. Only 50 or 60? He asked with a smile. I was planning on forever. Forever works too, I said, stretching up to kiss him. As the night wore on and our guests began to leave, Victor pulled me aside, leading me away from the party to a quiet corner of the garden. I have something for you, he said, pulling out a small box from his jacket pocket. Victor, you already gave me the most beautiful ring I've ever seen, I protested. This is different, he said, opening the box to reveal a key. This is the key to a property I acquired last month. It's in your name, completely separate from my business dealings. It's clean, legitimate, and it's yours to do whatever you want with. I stared at the key, understanding the magnitude of what he was giving me. Why? Because I want you to have something that's just yours, he said seriously. Something that can't be touched by my world, my enemies, my business. A safety net, if you ever need one. A way out, if you ever want one. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I'm never going to want a way out. I know, he said softly. But I need you to have the option. I need to know that you're with me because you choose to be, not because you're trapped. I threw my arms around him, holding him tight. I choose you, Victor Romano. Today, tomorrow, always. I choose you. When we finally went back to join our guests, I felt lighter than I had in days. This was my life now. Dangerous, complicated, morally ambiguous in ways that would have terrified the person I was before I met Victor. But it was also full of love, purpose, and partnership. Later that night, after all the guests had left and we were finally alone, Victor carried me over the threshold of our bedroom, both of us laughing like teenagers. You know, traditionally you're supposed to carry the bride over the threshold of your home, I pointed out. This is your home, he said, setting me down gently. It has been since the day you moved in. I just wanted an excuse to carry you. I reached up to loosen his tie, letting it fall to the floor. Well, you have me now, Mr. Romano. What are you going to do with me? His eyes darkened with desire. I'm going to spend the rest of the night showing my wife exactly how much I love her. And then tomorrow, and every day after that, I'm going to wake up grateful that you chose to share your life with me. That sounds perfect, I whispered, as he lowered his lips to mine. Making love as husband and wife felt different, more profound somehow. This wasn't just passion or desire. This was commitment, partnership, the sealing of vows we'd made before witnesses and before each other. When we finally fell asleep, tangled together in the sheets, I felt a sense of peace I'd never experienced before. This was my life now. Not perfect, not easy, but mine and Victor's together. A month after the wedding, I stood in what would become the community center I'd dreamed of building, watching workers put the finishing touches on the space. It would provide after-school programs, job training, and support services for families in the neighborhood where my father had done some of his shadiest dealings. Victor came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. It's coming together beautifully. It is, I agreed, leaning back against him. This is going to help a lot of people. You're going to help a lot of people, he corrected. This was your vision, your dream. I just provided the resources. We make a good team, I said, turning in his arms to face him. The best team, he agreed, pressing a kiss to my forehead. And this is just the beginning. Together we're going to build something amazing. Looking up at him, at this dangerous, powerful man who loved me with such fierce devotion, I knew he was right. We would build something amazing. Not just community centers and legitimate businesses, but a life full of meaning and purpose and love. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more threats, more challenges, more moments when the darkness of Victor's world threatened to overwhelm us. But we would face it together, as partners, as equals, as two people who chose each other every single day. I love you, I said, reaching up to cup his face in my hands. I love you too, he replied, more than I ever thought possible. You're my everything, Isla. My wife, my partner, my heart. As we stood there in the building that represented our shared future, I thought back to that day in Victor's office when everything changed. When I'd stood vulnerable and unafraid and said those fateful words. I thought I was alone. I'd been alone then, but I'd never be alone again. We drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Victor's hand rested on my thigh, a casual gesture of intimacy that felt as natural as breathing. What are you thinking about? He asked, glancing over at me. That day in your office, I admitted. How everything changed in an instant. Best instant of my life, he said with a smile. Walking through that door and finding you there. It was like the universe was giving me exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know I needed it. It was the same for me. I said softly. I thought I was going in to sign some papers and then go home to my empty apartment. Instead, I found you. And now here we are, Victor said, bringing my hand to his lips. Married, building a life together, facing down the world side by side. Here we are, I echoed, feeling a surge of gratitude for this complicated, beautiful, dangerous life we'd built together. That night, as we lay in bed, Victor suddenly propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. What? I asked, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. I want to have a baby with you, he said, and my breath caught at the naked vulnerability in his voice. Not right now, if you're not ready, but someday. I want to see you pregnant with our child, want to build a family with you. Tears sprang to my eyes at the picture he was painting. I want that too, more than anything. Yeah? His face lit up with hope and joy. Yeah, I confirmed, pulling him down for a kiss. Let's build our family, our empire, our future. All of it. Together. As we made love that night, slow and tender, I thought about the future Victor had described. Children, family, a legacy built not just on fear and power, but on love and purpose. It was everything I'd never dared to dream of, and it was all within our reach. Months turned into years, and our life continued to evolve and grow. The community center opened to overwhelming success, leading to 3 more in different neighborhoods. Victor's business evolved too, becoming more legitimate while still maintaining the power and influence he'd built. We faced challenges, of course. There were rival organizations that tested boundaries, business deals that went wrong, moments when danger felt too close for comfort, but we faced everything together, stronger for having each other to lean on. And through it all, Victor loved me with the same fierce devotion he'd shown from that first day. Every morning I woke up in his arms. Every night I fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat. I was reminded that I'd made the right choice. I chose him. Every single day I chose him, and he chose me right back. Standing in our bedroom now, 3 years after that fateful meeting in Victor's office, I looked at the life we'd built, the home we'd made, the work we'd done, the love that had only grown stronger with time. Victor came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting a hand on my slightly rounded belly, where our first child was growing. "What are you thinking about, beautiful?" he murmured against my ear. "How grateful I am," I said, covering his hand with mine. "For all of it. The good, the bad, the complicated, the beautiful. All of it led me here, to you, to this life we've built together." "I'm the grateful one," he said, turning me in his arms so he could see my face. "You took a chance on me, on us, when you had every reason to walk away. You saw the man beneath the monster and loved me anyway." "You were never a monster," I said firmly. "You're a man who does what he has to do to protect the people he loves. A man who built an empire but never lost his humanity. A man who loves me so completely that I never have to wonder where I stand." "You stand at my side," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Always, as my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, the love of my life. You stand at my side, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I could never regret it," I whispered, pulling him down for a kiss. "Choosing you was the best decision I ever made." As the sun set on another day, Victor and I stood together, hands intertwined, ready to face whatever tomorrow brought. Our love had been forged in fire, tested by challenges that would have destroyed lesser relationships. But we'd survived, thrived even, because we chose each other every single day. I'd thought I was alone that day in Victor's office, but I'd never been more wrong about anything in my life. I wasn't alone. I had Victor, and he had me, and together, we were unstoppable. This was our happy ending, our beginning, our forever. and it was everything I'd ever dreamed of and more. The story of how I walked into Victor Romano's office thinking I was alone and walked out having found my soulmate became the foundation of everything else. It was the moment everything changed, the instant when two lonely souls found each other and decided that together was better than apart. And every single day since, I'd been grateful for the broken air conditioning, the wrong door, and the timing that brought us together. Because sometimes, the best things in life happen when you least expect them. Sometimes, all it takes is walking into the right room at exactly the right moment and having the courage to say what's true, even when you're vulnerable and exposed. I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. I had Victor, and that made all the difference. So, that's my story. That's how a broken air conditioning unit and a moment of vulnerability changed my entire life. Victor and I built something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. But I want to hear from you now. Do you think I was crazy for trusting Victor so quickly? Would you have walked away after that first meeting? Or would you have taken the same leap of faith I did? And what about Victor's proposal after just 3 weeks together? Was that romantic or reckless? Here's what really gets me thinking, though. When Marcus delivered that threat, when someone tried to intimidate me by sending that box, Victor's reaction was immediate and brutal. He didn't hesitate, didn't question whether violence was the answer. In his world, protecting what's his means, eliminating threats permanently. So I have to ask you, if you were in my position, could you accept that side of someone you love? Could you live with knowing that the man who holds you tenderly at night is the same man who destroyed someone for threatening you? And that moment when Victor gave me the key to that property, the escape route I'd never use, what do you think that says about him? Was it controlling, making sure I had no excuse to feel trapped? Or was it the ultimate act of love, giving me freedom even though it terrified him that I might use it? I've been thinking a lot about choices lately. Every day I choose Victor, and he chooses me. But what about you? In your relationships, do you feel like you're choosing your partner every day, or have you fallen into routine? Are you with someone who sees you the way Victor sees me, who would burn the world down to keep you safe? Here's something that keeps me up at night sometimes. The community centers we've built, the legitimate business we're running, the good we're doing in neighborhoods that need it. Does that balance out the darkness of how Victor makes his money? Can you do enough good to offset the morally gray areas you operate in? Or am I just making excuses because I love him? When Isabella told me I was good for Victor because I see him for exactly who he is and love him anyway, it made me wonder. How many of us actually see our partners clearly, without the rose-colored glasses or the filters we put over their flaws? Do you really know who you're with? All their darkness and light? And if you do, does knowing everything make you love them more or less? I'd also love to know what you thought about my decision to get involved in Victor's business. Should I have stayed on the sidelines, let him handle the dangerous stuff while I played the pretty wife? Or was I right to demand a seat at the table, to use my skills and connections to help build something together? What would you do in my position? And finally, the big one, that baby Victor and I are expecting. Are we bringing a child into a world that's too dangerous? Am I being selfish, wanting to have Victor's child when I know that being a Romano comes with targets and threats and complications? Or is love enough to protect our family from the darkness that surrounds Victor's empire? I chose this life with open eyes. I chose Victor knowing exactly who and what he was, but I want to know if you think I made the right choice, or if I let passion and attraction blind me to the reality of what I was getting into. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. I read every single one, and your perspectives help me see my own story more clearly. Whether you think I'm living a fairy tale or making the biggest mistake of my life, I want to hear about it. And if my story resonated with you, if you've ever taken a risk on love that everyone else thought was crazy, or if you've ever chosen someone despite knowing all their flaws and dangers, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that the best things in life come from taking chances on the people who see us really see us, and choose us anyway. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about love, danger, and the complicated beauty of choosing someone every single day. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, not the perfect Instagram relationship or the fairy tale that everyone else approves of. What matters is finding someone who sees your vulnerability and doesn't run, who knows your strength and isn't threatened by it, who chooses you in the light and in the darkness. Victor and I, we're far from perfect. Our story isn't neat or clean or simple, but it's ours, and it's real. And it's built on a foundation of choosing each other when we could have walked away. So tell me, would you have made the same choices I did? Would you choose love over safety, partnership over simplicity, passion over peace? I'm genuinely curious where you stand on this. Thanks for listening to my story. Thanks for being here, for engaging, for caring about what happened to two people who met in the most unexpected way and built something beautiful from that chaos. Now go choose someone worth choosing. And if you already have, make sure they know it today.